sheriffs detained him and brought him in for questioning. They needed to find where Trisha was, and Stephen was the key to that information. What they would soon find out would shock and horrify even the most hardened of detectives, and Trisha's location would ultimately end up not being a simple answer. This is the interrogation of Stephen Williams. The week of April 26, 2016, Stephen Williams traveled from North Carolina to Hobe Sound, Florida, to spend the week with his daughter Faith. Stephen would tell investigators that their daughter wasn't feeling well, and he asked Trisha to come over with the baby. Cell phone records verified this statement. Stephen would state that when the baby fell asleep, Trisha left, and that he thought she went home. This was immediately alarming. Trisha was a highly disciplined person, and this behavior was so uncharacteristic that her family and co-workers would immediately raise concern.
And I've been involved with this case from the beginning, okay? And I've seen everything that we have. I've seen all the interviews. And at this point, I know we come in and we talk to you over and over and over again. We talk to you in Rona, we talk to you here. And we've always talked about the past. What happened that night, what happened that night, what happened that night. What I want to do is I want to kind of talk to you about the future, where we're going from here, okay? Now, you've already heard about all the stuff that we got. I mean, there's no question about what happened that night. We know that, that's one of them you're telling us, we know that you were involved with her theft. We know that. Okay? So the question is not what happened or anything like that. What we need to understand is, going forward, okay, there's going to be trial. Okay? There's going to be press. There's going to be everybody looking at this. You've seen everything. It's huge. The media gets involved, and everybody's going to have an opinion about what happened. And everybody's going to have an opinion about you and your relationship and what kind of person you are. Okay? And the thing that we're trying to do is, I talked to you earlier. I like you. I mean, I think we could be friends, you know, in different circumstances. But here's the thing. You know, there's going to be two narratives going forward. Okay? And what I want to do is try to give you the opportunity to kind of tell me more about what narrative actually happened.
News of Trisha's disappearance first came out as just a missing persons report. Marion County Sheriff's first impressions were that a normal mom just didn't come home one night, and that there was no reason to suspect foul play. Her family notified the Sheriff's Department after she failed to show up to the hospice where she was working. When they went to Trisha's house, in their words, it was like the Twilight Zone, and that Trisha had vanished into thin air. No one had heard from her, no one had seen her, but oddly enough, her car wasn't in the right place. There were groceries left on the counter, the lights were on. The sheriff's concern was growing quickly, and they immediately switched into actively searching for Trisha.
Okay. So, what we're looking at is, you know, there's the one option, okay? And that's the option that you were kind of getting earlier when Tom was in here, which is, you know, you planned this? You came down here with the intent purpose to hurt Trisha? That you planned to ditch her car here in some calculated way, and you planned to go put her in a certain place that nobody could find her and all that kind of stuff. And that sounds pretty bad, right? I mean, you wouldn't agree with that, okay? Now, the other alternative is that, like I said, we know what happened. We know that, you know, that something beyond what you were telling us happened in the house. But I think the more likely story is having seen, I mean, trust me, I've been here, you haven't seen me before involved in this, but I've seen you. Okay? I've done a lot of research on your background. And I know what it was like with Trisha. I know what kind of stuff you went through. I know she had a wild streak when she was younger. I know what she did. When she came after you, you know, that domestic thing that happened before, I know how that started. Okay, we've seen the reports, we know what all happened, we know she went back and said no, the whole thing was made up because she started. Okay.
The last person to see Trisha, Stephen, said that when she left, she did so on her own accord. There were no problems, everything was amicable, everyone was happy, the law enforcement was dumbfounded. What in the world happened to Trisha Todd? With nothing else to go on, investigators looked deeper into some of Trisha's personal items, like personal information on her cell phone, and most importantly, her journal. Inside that journal was information that would come to surprise detectives and simultaneously horrify her family. Trisha wrote about accounts of Stephen's abuse, both physically and mentally. Stephen would take out his aggression not only on his wife, but also on Trisha's dogs. There was even an entry detailing the time that Stephen purposely ended one of her dogs' lives, all of whom Trisha loved very much, right in front of her. Stephen wasn't the loving, harmless, well-to-do person he seemed to be on the outside. In fact, Stephen was a monster inside of a human shell.
What I think is important to me, having known you, having known the background of everything between you and her, never with another in the but I can see that I think probably what happened was something more like she started. And, you know, having known what her background was, having known how she treats you, I haven't seen text messages, I've seen how, what she said to you, okay? I know what kind of stuff she's bitching about stuff, I get that, I see that. So I could see how that would kind of go in the direction that way. Alright? So, what I want to do is try to set the stage so that you can actually tell the narrative about what actually happened, which is not that you planned all this, okay? Not that you planned down here just to come down here and kill her and send her out in the woods like some sort of mass murder. I mean, really? I mean, like you're going to chop her up in little bits or something like that? I mean, that seems kind of ridiculous, okay? It seems far-fetched, like you said, okay? And I don't think you planned all this. I don't think you're capable of that, okay? I think what happens is sometimes things just get out of hand. Okay, you agree with that? Sometimes, you know, people start doing something and they cause something to happen. Okay? And I'm not saying you wanted this to happen. Alright? But I know you were there when it happened. Okay? What we want to understand is what actually happened that night. Okay? And I know you were there. And I don't believe it was your fault. Okay?
The police already had an eyewitness account of Stephen driving Trisha's car near her house on the night of her disappearance, but what they also had was surveillance video. More specifically, they had surveillance footage near Trisha Todd's house that showed a black male with the same build as Stephen, wearing a very large military rucksack on his back, camouflage fatigues, and a skull cap, running through the shadows with what appears to be intent. The incriminating evidence is beginning to pile up higher and higher, but Stephen is almost completely unwavering in his version of events.
So, what I imagined something to be, you know, is maybe you guys got an argument. Maybe it was over the computer, maybe it was over the gas, maybe it was over whatever, okay? Any little nitpicky thing that she was going to get on you about, which she always did. I get that, okay? And things got heated, okay? You're down here to try to see your daughter. Okay? You're a good dad. You're trying to be down here to spend time with somebody that you care about, your daughter. And Trisha's here again, you know, and unfortunately, you know, Faith wants to see Trisha, and Faith is calling for Trisha. I'm sure that doesn't make you feel that good. She's trying to spend time with her daughter, okay? But it's, you know, and Trisha came over, but then things started getting kind of ugly, okay? And I'm sure she started it. And you didn't want to get involved in that, okay? But if she starts pushing things, she's not going to back up. She's unrelenting, okay? I've seen this, okay? I've seen the history, I've seen the background of how this works, okay? So, what I could see happening is maybe she came at you, and, I mean, just defending yourself, she falls, maybe you didn't realize how hard you pushed her out of the way, but you're just trying to defend yourself. You see what I'm saying? I'm not saying that you tried to hurt her, but I'm saying that it's clear that something happened there, and that resulted in Trisha getting injured to the point where she was deceased.
Stephen would stick to his story for some time, but he would eventually change his story, finally cracking his credibility with his own words. Stephen would deny knowing how it happened, but would admit that he found Trisha dead, and he was so scared that he chose to dispose of her body. The gaps in logic are obvious, but this is the version of events that Stephen chose to tell Detective Dan Dulac. Not admitting to knowing anything isn't a problem right now. Dulac can continue to work on it as the conversation progresses. The important part is that Stephen has now admitted to knowing that Trisha was no longer alive, and that Stephen has disposed of the body. His involvement in her disappearance is now a fact on both sides of the interrogation. Now it's time for Dulac to press Stephen to confess to the rest of the crimes he has committed.
Okay, and then beyond that, I can see, I'm putting myself in your shoes for a minute. Okay, I see that you're a hard worker. Okay, you rose through the ranks. You're in the Air Force. You've been there what, 11, 12 years? You said. I mean, that's a long time. That's a career. You devoted your life to that career, to this country. Okay, you got your daughter to think about. Okay, something happens. Trisha's involved. Now she's gone. There's nothing you can do about that. What are you going to do about it? And like you said, people aren't going to believe that you were, planning to do this. People aren't going to believe that you were intending to hurt her in some way. But sometimes shit just happens. And now here it is. So now you've got to make a choice. Okay? Do you call cops and roll the dice that we're going to believe your story? Or do you try to do you go into a little bit of panic mode? Trust me, if I was in the scene, I don't know what I would have done. Okay? I couldn't even imagine being in that position. But I can understand going into that panic mode. Holy shit, what do I need to do now?
The detective tries to explain to Stephen that, all things considered, they have more than enough evidence to take him to trial. All signs point to Stephen. However, he wants to give him a chance to tell his version of events, his truth. He positions it as if he tells the truth, he'll give the family some closure, and he'll come across as more remorseful instead of a monster. As we've covered in other videos, the police were under no legal obligation to tell the truth during the course of an investigation. With what they have now, they couldn't really take Stephen to trial for first-degree murder with any sort of confidence. Detective Dulac opts to put the pressure on Stephen. This is a risky move. Stephen was a military man after all, but he was not an investigator, and the cards are heavily stacked against him being able to lie his way out of the situation he's currently in. The certainty in Stephen's guilt is ripe, and Detective Dulac is ready to pluck the fruit of justice.
And so your first plan, I mean, you told us that your plan was that you were just going to take her back to the house and you were going to leave her there, which I understand, because she's going to be back by her house and people are going to find her, and then maybe they'll look other places, you know what I mean? And I understand that, okay? And that's what you told us. That was kind of your first thought. But that's probably when you saw that Joshua stuff on. So, and now you're not going to run the risk of him coming out when this is all going on, because I mean that's probably what we'll for all, right? I mean, if Joshua comes out and sees all this, he's not going to understand. He's obviously going to think that you planned this and did this intentionally. So now we're going to go back to the house, okay? And of course, Trisha, being the way she is, there's no gas in her. Typical Trisha. And I mean, come on. I mean, how hard is it to go fill up a gas tank? I mean, really? It's not that hard. It's not that hard. You gotta think ahead about this type of stuff. I never looked at this my gas tank up a little quarter of a tank. That's me. But I pay attention to that stuff. My wife should run that gas tank in work. And then the next thing you know, I gotta go out in the middle of the night because I gotta run and get groceries or something. I'm also getting gas because she didn't think ahead about it. Okay. So now, well, obviously, you can't go to the gas station in her car because she's in the car. Right? So,
in what would seem on its surface as a misstep, Dulac speaks nearly non-stop for about a half an hour. Stephen's addition to the conversation is mostly non-verbal affirmations and denials, head shakes and nods. We want Stephen to be the one talking, right? In reality, this is a strategy that interrogators will use to manipulate suspects into believing they have no other viable maneuvers or excuses available. They are led to believe that there is an overwhelming amount of information and evidence against them, and any possible lie, excuse, alibi, or otherwise has already been debunked. Detective Dulac continues talking, mostly speaking in statements or rhetorical questions, and at times repeating himself. Even if Detective Dulac is not telling the truth or repeating something he said a few minutes before, these are essentially inconsequential. The strategy's power lies in the conversation being one-sided with a matter-of-fact tone and overwhelming suspects into ultimately telling the truth.
But if you don't tell us the truth about what happened, it just continues to make it look like you're lying to us to cover up something more sinister, for lack of a better word. Like you intended this to happen, and now you're covering it up. And I don't want that to be the story. And I know. And that's why I want you to have this opportunity to tell me the truth about how she became injured, how Tricia lost her life. Yeah, you do. Okay? And I know that you were in the house. Like I said, I can prove. But I didn't do anything to her. And you're not hearing me. Okay, you're not hearing me. Okay, I'm not saying that you did anything to her on purpose. I'm not saying that you hurt her. I'm not saying that you laid hands on her. Okay, but I do know that you know what happened to her. I know that you know what happened to her. I know you were in the house. I know it. Okay, and I can prove that. And I don't want to have to get up and on the jury in the stand and explain to the jury that even after giving the opportunity to tell me the truth about what happened, to tell me the truth that you're not this cold-blooded murderer who came down here to kill her. You can tell me that, but you continue to tell me a lie about what happened. You continue to tell me a lie about how you found her dead, how she came to be injured like that. And I know I don't want that to be the last thing that we hear about this. I don't want the last thing that you're able to tell us is this lie about how she got hurt, because that is the most important piece of this. There's no question that she was killed. There's no question that she was taken out and
I mean, just so busy that I've just now had a moment. Okay, let's tag Hog because